Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss on the topic brief historical review of adapted physical education. To start with, we'll introduce the topic. Adapted physical education APE, as we know, is the art and science of developing, implementing and monitoring a carefully designed physical education instructional program for a learner with a disability, based on a comprehensive assessment to give the learner the skills necessary for a lifetime of rich leisure, recreation and sport experiences to enhance physical fitness and wellness. Although significant progress concerning educational services for individuals with disabilities have been relatively recent, the use of physical activity or exercise for medical treatment and therapy is not new. Therapeutic exercises can be traced to 3000 BC in China. It is known that the ancient Greeks and Romans also recognized the importance of medical and therapeutic exercises. However, the idea of physical education or physical activity to meet the unique educational needs of individuals with disabilities is a recent phenomenon. Efforts to serve these populations through physical education and sports has been given significant attention only during the 20th century, although efforts began in the United States in the 19th century. Let's now talk about the beginning of adapted physical activity. In 1838, physical activity began receiving special attention at the Perkins School for Students with Visual Disabilities in Boston. According to Charles E. Buell, a noted physical educator with a visual impairment, this special attention resulted from the fact that Samuel Girdley Hovey, the school director, advocated the health benefits of physical activity. For the first 8 years, physical education consisted of compulsory recreation in the open air. In 1840, when the school was moved to south of Boston, boys participated in gymnastic exercises and swimming. This was the first physical education program in the United States for students who were blind, and by Buell's account, it was far ahead of physical education in public schools. Let's now talk about the medical orientation. Although physical education was provided in the early 1800s to people with visual impairments as well as people with other disabilities, medically oriented gymnastics and drills began in the latter part of the century for the forerunner of modern adapted physical education in the United States. Sherrill in 2004 stated that physical education prior to 1900 was medically oriented and preventive, developmental or corrective in nature. Its purpose was to prevent illness and promote the health and vigor of the mind and body. Strongly influencing this orientation was a system of medical gymnastics developed in Sweden by Per Henrik Ling and introduced to the United States in 1884. Now we will talk about the shift to sport and the whole person. From the end of the 19th century into the 1930s, programs began to shift from medically oriented physical training to sports-centered physical education, and concern of the whole child emerged. Compulsory physical education in public schools increased dramatically. The training of the physical education teacher rather than medical training developed for the promotion of physical education. This transition resulted in broad mandatory programs consisting of games, sports, rhythmic activities, and calisthenics designed to meet the needs of the whole person. Individuals unable to participate in the regular activities were provided corrective and remedial physical education. According to Sherrill, physical education programs between the 1930s and the 1950s consisted of regular or corrective classes for students who today would be considered normal. Sherrill, in 2004, has sufficiently described adapted physical education during this period in the United States. Assignment to physical education was based upon a thorough medical examination by a physician who determined whether a student should participate in the regular or the corrective program. Corrective classes were comprised primarily of limited, restricted, or modified activities related to health, posture, or fitness problems. In many schools, students were excused from physical education. In others, the physical educators typically taught several sections of regular physical education and one section of corrective physical education each day. Leaders in corrective physical education continued to have strong backgrounds in medicine or physical therapy. Persons preparing to be physical education teachers generally completed one university course in corrective physical education as well. Now we will talk about the emerging comprehensive subdiscipline. During the 1950s, more and more pupils described as handicapped were being served in public schools, and the outlook towards them was becoming increasingly humanistic. With a greater diversity in pupils came a greater diversity in programs to meet their needs. In 1952, the American Association for Health, Physical Education and Recreation, also referred to as APHER, formed a committee to define the subdiscipline and give direction and guidance to professionals. This committee defined adapted physical education as a diversified program of developmental activities, games, sports, rhythms suited to the interests, capacities and the limitations of students with disabilities who may not safely or successfully engage in unrestricted participation in the rigorous activity of the regular physical education program. A committee on adapted physical education gave this definition on 1952. The definition retained the evolving diversity of physical education and specifically includes students with disabilities. Adapted physical education serves today as a comprehensive term for this subdiscipline. Let us now put some light on the recent and current status. With the impetus provided by the more humanistic, more informed and less discriminatory society, major advances continued in the 1960s. Many of these advances were associated with the Joseph P. Kennedy family. In 1965, the Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. Foundation awarded a grant to APHER to launch the project on recreation and fitness for the mentally retarded. The project grew to encompass all special populations and its name was changed in 1968 to the Unit on Programs for the Handicapped. As director of the unit, Dr. Julian Stein dramatically influenced adapted physical education at every level throughout the United States. In 1968, The Kennedy Foundation exhibited further concern for the individuals with mental retardation by establishing the Special Olympics. This program grew rapidly, with competitions held at the local, state, national and international levels in an ever-increasing range of sports. During the mid-1960s, concern for people with emotional or learning disabilities had a significant effect on the adapted physical education in the United States. The importance for the physical activity for the well-being of those with emotional problems was explicitly recognized by the National Institute of Mental Health (NIMH) of the US Department of Health and Human Services, also called DHHS, when it funded the Buttonwood Farms project. The project, conducted at Buttonwood Farms, Pennsylvania, included a physical recreation component. This project was valuable for the recognizing the importance of physical activity in the lives of individuals with disabilities, bringing the problems of seriously disturbed youth to the attention of the educators, the developing curriculum material to prepare professionals in physical education and recreation for work with this population. During the same era, adapted physical education gained much attention with the use of perceptual motor activities as a modality for academic and intellectual development, particularly for students with learning disabilities. The contention that movement experiences serve as a basis for intellectual abilities has lost support in the recent years. However, the use of movement experiences, including active games, for the development and reinforcement of academic abilities appear to be regaining popularity and research-based support. Let's now go to the historical background of adapted physical education. To start with, we will talk about the primitive societies. Children born with defects generally perished at an early age as a consequence of their inability to withstand the rigor of primitive man's strenuous existence. As it is, they followed the principle of the survivor of the fittest. Next, let's talk about the Spartans, the early civilized society in Greece. The Spartans placed a lot of importance on physical perfection, and hence, when a child was born with a defect or disability, then they were thrown down from Mount Taygetus to perish. The Athenians, the people of Athens, were also believers of physical and military perfection, and hence, when a child was deformed by birth, they were permitted to die of neglect. Next, we can talk about the Roman Empire. There, babies born with birth defects suffered a like fate. Then comes the Middle Ages. Those with disabilities during the Middle Ages were believed to have been caused by Satan. Hence, they are sinful and evil and treated harshly and carefully avoided. Next period comes the period of Renaissance. It gained understanding of their problems but did not extend to include treatment, care and education. Another period is the period of 1900s. Social awareness of the problems gained momentum in this country with the opening of schools for them and centers for treatment. Next is the period of World War I and II. It gave impetus to providing vocational rehabilitation to the civilians injured in industrial accidents. Next, we talk about government assistance. The first thing that they did was in 1920. First law providing vocational rehabilitation to the civilians injured in industrial accidents. In 1943, a law passed to provide for the rehabilitation of soldiers with war disabilities. In 1940s, federal sponsored programs were established for disabled individuals such as Institution for Mentally Ill and Emotionally Disturbed. Schools for blind, deaf and mentally retarded were also established. In the 1960s, the Office for Special Education and Rehabilitation Services was established. Next, in 1973, the Rehabilitation Act summarized by explaining that individuals may not be discriminated against because of their disabilities. In 1975, PL 94 to 142, the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, Special Education, specially designed instruction at no cost to the parents to meet individual needs of a handicapped child, including classroom instruction, instruction in physical education, home instruction, and instruction in hospitals and institutions. In 1985, Amendment to PL 94 to 142 extends special education services to preschool children with disabilities and encourages state through a discretionary grant program to provide early prevention services to infants with disabilities, birth to age 36 months and their families as well. In 1900s, PL 101 to 476, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act IDEA was formed. In 1990s, the American Disability Act ADA was also found. Next, we will be talking about the evolution of adapted physical education. 3000 years ago, in China, depicting therapeutic use of gymnastics for individuals with disabilities. It was the first time that adapted physical education was noticed. In 1879, the Corrective Physical Education Center was established at Harvard for correcting certain pathological conditions. During World War I and II, the development of physical therapy and adapted sports started. In the 1940s, fundamental changes were initiated in physical education in some universities, public schools, and special schools. Calisthenics, gymnastics, and corrective physical education supplemented in the course contents by game, sports, and rhythmic modified to meet the individual needs of the students. Now we can come to the conclusion that people who pursue a career of teaching physical education and coaching sports typically enjoy physical activities and are active participants in physical education and athletics. Often, however, they do not become knowledgeable about adapted physical education and sports until they prepare for their careers. With increased awareness, they realize that people with unique needs might exhibit abilities ranging from very low to extremely high. As they gain experience, students begin to appreciate that people with a variety of unique needs are involved in adapted physical education and sports. They learn that those with unique needs include people with or without disabilities. Being involved in disability awareness activities and having an opportunity to function as if one has a disability provides important insights and values to prospective teachers. Although significant progress concerning educational services for individuals with disabilities has been relatively recent, the use of physical activity or exercise for medical treatment and therapy is not new. Therapeutic exercises can be traced to 3000 BC in China. It is known that the ancient Greeks and Romans also recognized the medical and therapeutic value of exercise. With this, we conclude today's topic. Thank you.